years old, and I used to think love was supposed to hurt, that if it didn't ache, it wasn't real. That belief nearly destroyed me. The fluorescent lights in the ER hummed above me, the steady rhythm of a place that never slept. It was 2:37 a.m. when my phone buzzed again, lighting up the dark break room. I already knew who it was before I looked. Jason, Tess, I'm not talking to you this week. Maybe then you'll learn how much better you need to be for me. A sharp laugh escaped my throat more from exhaustion than amusement. My lower back throbbed from 16 hours on my feet, and my scrubs smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. I stared at the message, feeling that same dull twist in my gut I'd come to know too well. Fourth time this month. The first had been when I missed his call during a 30-second shower after a trauma code. The third, because I didn't laugh right at a joke he sent. And now this, because a multi-car pileup had kept me from texting back. I should have felt angry. Instead, I just felt numb. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could already picture his reply. Excuses again. Cynthia. Then the spiral, me apologizing, him punishing me, begging for forgiveness for something that wasn't even wrong. So this time I locked my phone. The silence that followed was deafening. I leaned back against the locker, the chill of metal seeping through the thin fabric of my scrubs. The memory of last year's birthday surfaced without permission, a night that had once seemed romantic until he'd turned it into a humiliation. You got us dinner at the same place we went on our third date. This is your idea of special. He'd sneered, scrolling through Instagram, as I sat there with the tiny velvet box in my hand. I had saved for weeks a delicate sapphire necklace, the one he said he'd loved in a shop window. You said you liked this place, I'd whispered, voice trembling. For casual nights, maybe he'd replied, without looking up. God at least pretend to put in effort. When I slid the box across the table, he didn't even lift the lid. Jewelry as an apology for being boring pass. He hadn't spoken to me for 3 days after that. On the fourth, I'd shown up with his favorite bourbon and lilies. He'd opened the door in a robe, looking me up and down, like I was an inconvenience. Love bombing now, textbook manipulation, he'd said, flatly shutting the door before I could speak. Back then, I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe if I were more patient, more exciting, less tired from work, he'd stop punishing me. A patient monitor beeped from down the hall, snapping me back to the present. I rubbed my hands together, one palm still faintly scarred from the night I'd crushed a glass after another one of his silent treatments. That scar had faded, but not gone. Neither had the shame. The next morning, I drove home through pre-dawn fog, the city lights bleeding into the horizon. My phone buzzed again on the passenger seat, another text from Jason. So you're really ignoring me now, pathetic. The word pathetic lingered like smoke I couldn't clear. When I finally stepped into my apartment, sunlight filtering through the curtains, my phone lit up again, this time from Mark, one of my oldest friends. Truck's loaded. We need your help, Ev. You in. Right. Moving day. I'd promised weeks ago to help him and his wife Sarah before the baby came. I typed a quick, be there in 30, and tossed the phone onto the counter. I was halfway into the shower when I heard the ringtone again, muffled by running water. The vibration felt like a pulse through the walls. I ignored it until the water turned cold. When I stepped out, the screen was flashing. Jason, 8:17 a.m. Where are you? I've called 4 times. We were supposed to talk about the wedding this morning. The wedding. His cousin's destination wedding, the one he'd volunteered me to pay for without even asking. Another text appeared. You're ignoring me for Mark. That's where your priorities are. Pathetic. I stared at my reflection, damp hair clinging to my cheeks, dark circles under my eyes. I typed slowly. I told you last night I was helping them move. I was in the shower. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, I'm not talking to you for a week. Maybe then you'll learn how much better you need to be for me. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering against the tile, not from shock, from clarity. It was like when a trauma patient suddenly codes the noise, the panic, the chaos, and then in one breath, everything slows down. You see what needs to be done. You act. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our messages, not the last few days, but all of them. Every, you should have known better. Every. If you really loved me, every you make me act like this. The realization hit like a defibrillator shock. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his emotional punching bag. My chest rose and fell slowly as I stared around the apartment. The framed photo of us on the shelf, the half-empty bourbon bottle, the takeout menus from his favorite restaurants. I picked up a magnet from the fridge, the one holding his grocery list in that looping, perfect handwriting I used to love. I flipped it over and with a dry erase marker wrote on the back, Learn my lesson. You win. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me. This time I didn't look back. The first 2 days felt eerily quiet, like walking through an empty house that used to hum with noise. I kept catching myself reaching for my phone during lulls at work. Muscle memory trained to check for his messages, but the screen stayed dark. No good morning text demanding replies within minutes. No cryptic, we need to talk notifications waiting like landmines. Just silence. And silence, I realized, can be both terrifying and holy. By the third morning, I poured coffee without shaking. The ER pager buzzed, but my phone didn't. It was strange how much lighter I felt, like someone had turned off a constant background alarm I hadn't known was ringing. At noon, I met Mark and Sarah at their new house. Boxes everywhere, sunlight slanting through half-drawn blinds. Sarah's baby bump was more pronounced now. She moved slower, smiling through exhaustion. "You look different," she said, squinting as she handed me a roll of tape. "Different how peaceful, like you slept." I laughed softly. First full night in 2 years. Mark grinned. "Guess we owe Jason a thank you then." "Don't you dare," I said, though the corner of my mouth lifted. While we worked, my phone buzzed once, an unknown number. "Emergency. My mom's in the hospital. Please answer." My stomach twisted for a moment, the instinct to drop everything nearly won. But then I remembered last night Sarah had sent me screenshots from social media despite my protests. Jason's mother was posting from Cancun, margarita in hand. The manipulation was as predictable as the sunrise. I set the phone face down on the table and kept packing. That evening, while washing dishes at home, I finally allowed myself to feel something other than guilt. I thought about the hundreds of tiny humiliations I'd brushed aside every time he mocked my work schedule, every accusation of being cold because I didn't text during surgeries, every time he'd sulked until I canceled a night shift just to soothe him. And underneath all that pain, a new realization bloomed. Small, steady, dangerous. I was free. Still, freedom comes with ghosts. On the fifth day, as I sat in the break room sipping coffee, my phone buzzed again. A text from another unknown number. "Miss me yet?" Attached was a meme, that old, distracted boyfriend photo, except my face had been clumsily photoshopped over the woman being ignored. I exhaled sharply through my nose and deleted it without replying. Later that night, while walking to my car under the pale hospital lights, I looked up at the sky. A thin silver moon hung there, fragile but bright, and for the first time in forever, my shoulders weren't hunched. I didn't have to check if someone was tracking my location or timing my replies. Just silence, blessed, unbothered silence. The next morning, I woke up naturally, no buzzing phone, no pit in my stomach. I went for a run, let the cold air bite at my cheeks, and felt alive. When I returned home, Sarah had texted, "Don't freak out, but you need to see this." Attached was a screenshot of Jason's Instagram story, a black and white selfie captioned, "When you give 100%, but they only see 50. I rolled my eyes and typed back, "Classic." "He's unraveling," she replied. But honestly, good for him. I wanted to agree, but instead I just stared at the message, strangely hollow. There was no satisfaction, just distance. By day 7, his tone had shifted entirely. A final text arrived at 3:17 a.m. "Fine. Stay childish. When you're alone and miserable, remember you threw us away." Old me would have been awake, crafting an apology, rehearsing explanations, trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. This version of me, the one bathed in quiet morning light instead of emotional chaos, simply slept. When I woke, I brewed coffee, opened my curtains, and let sunlight flood the room. At breakfast with Sarah and Mark later that morning, Sarah slid her phone across the table again. "You'll love this," she said, smirking. It was another post, Jason clinking glasses with a woman at some trendy bar. Caption, "When upgrade season comes early." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Recognize him?" I looked closer. The man next to him was the bartender from that place Jason always dragged me to, the one who gave her free drinks while ignoring me. "Poetic," I murmured. Mark chuckled as he buttered his toast for Sarah. "Dodged a bullet, Ev." For the first time in years, I didn't just agree. I believed it. That night, I sat by my window, listening to rain tick against the glass. The world felt quiet, almost sacred. I thought about that note I'd left on my fridge. Learn my lesson. You win. Maybe winning wasn't about who hurt whom more. Maybe it was just about walking away with your sanity intact. And for once, I was okay with that. By week 2, the quiet had become a companion. The absence of chaos was almost disorienting, like stepping off a rocking boat and realizing the ground no longer moves beneath you. Every morning, I brewed my coffee in the same chipped mug Jason used to call ugly. I let the bitterness settle on my tongue like proof that peace didn't have to taste sweet to feel right. Then Sarah texted again. Brace yourself. Attached was a TikTok of Jason sitting in his car with the windows fogged up. His eyes red, music swelling in the background, that melodramatic heartbreak song every influencer used after a breakup. Caption, when you give your all to someone who stops trying. I almost laughed. But instead I felt nothing. Just a faint, distant ache for the version of me who once would have been shattered by it. He's crying on TikTok, I texted back. Oh, he's crying and hashtagging healing journey. It's a whole performance, she replied. I shook my head, sliding the phone face down. For years, I'd believed every tear he shed was my fault. Now, watching him weaponize sadness for sympathy, I saw it for what it was, manipulation dressed as vulnerability. Still, something about the attention made him restless. 2 days later, his new relationship was public. Sarah showed me the screenshots before I could protest. Jason, with a brunette influencer, her head tilted just enough to show off the angles. Caption, filled with fire emojis and congratulations. Underneath, I noticed one line from Jason himself. No more drama, just love. I stared at it for a long time, not because I cared, but because of the audacity. The man who once called me overly emotional was now posting love quotes between sponsored cologne ads. It was almost theatrical. I scrolled once more and saw Sarah's text bubble pop up again. You're not going to like this part. She sent another screenshot, Jason's story, showing him kissing that same woman tagged at the Velvet Lounge. Our old spot. The one where he used to tell me, you don't need to dress up that much, it's just casual. For a second, anger bubbled. Not heartbreak, just the insult of recycled memories. But then something odd happened. The anger faded fast, replaced by amusement. I typed, upgrade season ended fast. You're stronger than I thought, Sarah replied, with a little heart. That night, I found myself walking through the city after a late shift. The air smelled like rain and street food, and for once I didn't flinch when my phone buzzed. It was him, again. Unknown number, but I didn't need to guess. Remember Italy? That little restaurant near the lake. You said it felt like home. I stared at the message until the words blurred. We'd never gone to Italy. We'd only watched travel vlogs while eating microwave pasta. But he had said that line once, rehearsing it like a script. I deleted it without replying. Later that week, his post took another turn. Gone were the romantic photos. Now came cryptic quotes. Sometimes you don't realize who's fake until it's too late. The most loyal hearts get broken by the coldest souls. Sarah sent. He's in his poetry era, she joked. He's in his deflection era, I replied. Then silence. Almost a full week with nothing. I let myself hope it was over. I'd even started to enjoy the rhythm of my new normal shifts. Morning runs dinner with Mark and Sarah. Until that Friday. The hospital intercom crackled overhead. Code blue. ER Bay 3. I sprinted down the hall, adrenaline surging. A young man on the gurney, chest compressions, nurses calling vitals, monitors, screaming. My world narrowed to the beat of my hands pressing against his sternum. When the code ended, pulse regained, crowd dispersing, I stepped into the hallway to catch my breath. And froze. Jason was standing there. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but like someone who'd run out of performances. His hair was messy. Eyes bloodshot, that old cologne, faint under the smell of antiseptic. Cynthia, he said, voice cracking. We need to talk. I blinked, still half in work mode. What are you doing here? You blocked me. You wouldn't answer. I didn't know what else to do. A nurse brushed past us, pushing a cart. The hallway hummed with urgency lives moving forward while this ghost tried to drag me back. I'm in the middle of a shift, I said flatly. He reached out fingers, brushing my sleeve. You don't get to just walk away after everything we've been through. Before I could answer, a sharp voice cut through the hall. Dr. Hart. We're losing him again. Dr. Chin's shout snapped me back. I pulled free from Jason's grip. I'm not doing this right now. This is exactly what I mean, he yelled after me. You always choose work over love. But his voice faded behind the swinging ER doors. By the time I came out covered in sweat, heart still pounding, he was gone. Only a folded piece of paper sat on my clipboard. In his handwriting, You broke us. I stared at it for a long moment, then picked up my pen and wrote beneath it, No, you broke me. I just stopped letting you. Then I walked away, leaving the note on the counter. The night after Jason showed up at the hospital, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same two images, his face in that hallway trembling with anger and desperation, and the patient's chest rising under my hands as life returned. One fight, one heartbeat, one I saved, one I finally let die. The next morning, I walked into the ER early. My badge felt heavier than usual, and yet my steps were lighter. I had already decided what to do. The first thing I did when my shift ended was open my phone. I found his name in my contacts, one I had refused to delete for reasons I didn't understand until now. Maybe I had left it there as proof of something, a reminder of who I used to be. But this time my thumb didn't hesitate. Block, delete, gone. Still my hands shook, not out of fear, but finality. That evening, as I was restocking the trauma cart, Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. "He actually came here?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, avoiding her eyes, "while I was coding a patient." "Unbelievable. Believe it. He said I chose work over love." "No, you chose yourself over manipulation," she corrected. Her words hung in the air, grounding me. I thought of the hundreds of moments I'd given up for him. Skipped meals, canceled plans, missed sleep to prove my devotion. He called it love, but it was servitude. That realization was almost physical, like exhaling a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for years. Later that night, I sat alone on my balcony. The city sprawled below like a map of possibilities I'd never dared to follow. The phone vibrated once, a text from an unknown number. "I didn't deserve how you left me. I just wanted to talk." I didn't respond. Another ping seconds later. "I'm sorry, okay, I miss us." I closed my eyes. His apologies were like storm sirens, loud, desperate, impossible to ignore, but they never meant safety. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed something I'd been too afraid to put into words. Closure doesn't come from conversations. It comes from walking away and not turning back. I hit save. That same night, a call came through from the hospital, a genuine emergency this time. A multi-car crash. I rushed in, hair still damp from the shower, adrenaline taking over. Hours blurred together, compressions, stitches, shouting the scent of blood and antiseptic. And then somewhere between the chaos, it hit me. I hadn't thought about him once. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds in soft golden stripes. I brewed coffee and opened the balcony doors, letting the breeze in. My apartment felt alive again, not haunted. A single unopened message sat on my phone, the last one from him. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly and whispered, "Not this time." Then I did something symbolic. I changed my phone number. Not out of fear, but freedom. When I went to work later that day, I found that folded note still sitting on my clipboard. "You broke us." I turned it over, scrawled one more line beneath my last message. "You can't break something that was never whole." And I tossed it into the biohazard bin, fitting somehow, toxic waste where it belonged. As the day faded into night, the hospital grew quieter. I stood by the window in the break room, watching the lights flicker across the parking lot. In the reflection, I saw a woman who looked calm. Tired, yes, but no longer broken. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like half of something. I just felt whole. 6 months passed. In hospital time, that's 100 shifts, dozens of saves, and more than enough nights to forget a man who once convinced me that love meant survival. I had moved to a brighter apartment near the river, small, quiet, but filled with sunlight. The fridge that once held Jason's notes now held ultrasound photos and baby announcements from friends. Sarah had given birth to a healthy boy, and every time I visited, she'd smile and say, "You look different again, Ev. Lighter this time." She was right. Work had become less of an escape and more of a calling again. I laughed with my colleagues. I learned to sleep without checking my phone. I learned that silence wasn't absence, it was peace. And then came Liam. We met on a night shift when he brought in a patient from the fire department. No games, no manipulation, just warmth. He smiled like someone who wasn't trying to sell anything. When he texted, "Did you get home safe?" it wasn't about control, it was about care. One evening, months later, he cooked dinner at my place. I'd just finished washing dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number again. For a moment, my breath caught. Old reflexes die hard. I picked it up. "I saw your Instagram. You look happy." The words were simple, familiar, like deja vu with a chill behind it. I didn't need to guess who it was. "Jason." I stared at the message for a long second. The same man who once told me I'd never find anyone patient enough to handle me was still reaching out fishing for relevance. Beside me, Liam leaned on the doorframe towel slung over his shoulder. "Work?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Wrong number." He nodded without pressing. That was one of the things I loved most. He didn't dig for ghosts. When he wrapped his arms around me, I let myself sink into the quiet certainty of that embrace. No tension. No second guessing what version of myself I needed to be today. Just stillness. another buzz, another message. I miss us. I almost laughed. Not cruelly, just with disbelief at the symmetry of it all. A year ago, those words would have cracked something inside me. Now they bounced off a heart that had finally healed in silence. I swiped the notification away. The phone screen went black, and in its reflection, I saw Liam's smile, soft and steady. "You okay?" he murmured. "Yeah," I said. "Just finally done with something." He kissed my temple, and that was that. No dramatic goodbyes. No long texts. No closure conversations that reopen old wounds. Just quiet acceptance that some endings don't need punctuation, just peace. Later that night, as we lay in bed, the rain tapping gently against the windows, I thought about all the ways I'd confused control for love, all the times I'd mistaken manipulation for passion. And then I thought about how love really feels not like walking on glass, but like walking home. My last thought before drifting to sleep was simple. Some ghosts never know they're dead, but you don't have to haunt them back. The phone buzzed one last time on the nightstand. I didn't reach for it. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance like applause from the universe itself. Inside, there was only peace. Some people talk about love like a battlefield, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fight harder, it's